Hello internet friends, my name is Catherine and I'm the human behind Creation Miss Couture, and today is another Color Wheel Monday, the series in which I make my way through color theory one color at a time. So we're going to take off from last week because I want to reformat a little bit. It's going to be the same type of content, however, I want to reformat in a way that we're going to see the full gradient in one episode. So we're going to see, for example, we've been doing deep magenta and brilliant yellow. So I want to take from one end where we have deep magenta as the main character with 0.05 milliliter or depth of shade of the brilliant yellow up to the other end of the spectrum where we're going to have brilliant yellow as our main character with 1% depth of shade and 0.05% depth of shade for deep magenta. So we're technically going to be concluding this portion of our color wheel color theory thing. So you will be able at the end of this episode to see the full spectrum from one end to the other. So moving forward, this is what I want to do with this series, having the full spectrum in one episode. So let's get into this. Welcome back to another Color Wheel Monday, the series in which I make my way through color theory one color at a time. Okay, so I know that you can see that we already have Deep Magenta and Brilliant Yellow, and I know we already just did Deep Magenta with Brilliant Yellow. However, today we're going to do it differently because we're going to take the Brilliant Yellow as our 1% depth of shade and then do the other side of our little color thingy. So basically, I want to do the whole thing, but like reverse. And then we're going to be comparing it right now, what we're going to do, because I want to be doing this going going further. We're going to go with our colors in the middle and like just do like the entire thing in one thing. Oh my gosh, I don't speak properly today. Anyways, you will like stay with me and we'll understand what we're doing. So I'm going to grab my respirator because you don't have to use this specific one, but we want to make sure that we are using a respirator that will avoid you to breathe in all the fine particles from the dyes. So because we only have one pair of lungs and we need to protect them. So we're going to be doing our stock solution, 1% depth of shade, so 1 gram per 100 milliliter of water. Okay. So let's start with deep magenta. You can see that it's winter because there is a little bit of static with the plastic. And always make sure that you're zeroing out your scale before doing anything. Okay. And now we are going to be adding our hot water in the jars. Okay, and now that the dyes are wet, we can remove our respirator because it's only when it's in the dry powder form that it is dangerous to breathe in. So we want to make sure that we don't breathe that in. And we want to make sure that there's no clumps of any sorts in there. Okay. You can always use one of those little strainer to like make sure that you don't have any clumps of dry powder in your stock solution, which is like it's a good habit to have if you want to. Okay, I'm just going to grab our containers. Okay, so I know that we only have 5 containers, and that's because we've already done the 1-for-1. So what we're going to do is we're going to have all of those here at 1% depth of shade of the brilliant yellow, and we're going to do 0.05% depth of shade up to 0.75% depth of shade. So That way, like, we're going to have the nice gradient. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for earlier, gradient. Okay, so I'm going to start by doing the 10 milliliter of brilliant yellow because we're doing 1% depth of shade, which means that for our 10-gram mini skeins, we need 10 milliliter of 1% depth of shade stock solution. And please make sure that you're only using dedicated to dyeing yarn. Your containers, jars, spoons, anything, everything needs to be 100% dedicated to yarn dyeing. Okay, so we're going to grab my spoon and put it somewhere else. Okay, so we're going to do the 0.5 milliliter now. Now we're doing 1 milliliter, 2.5 millimeter, and then we're going to do 5 millimeter, and then we're going to do 7.5 millimeter for our 0.75% depth of shade. Okay, right here. Just going to move this. Okay. Stir, stir, stir. And now we should be able to see the orange gradient that we started to see with when we did last week our deep magenta with brilliant yellow. Okay, so now we can do these. Hee hee, we're already seeing this cute yellow. Like it's a very warm yellow. And this is something that I really like to see. I like warm yellow. That's what I've doing this job of dyeing yarn. This is what I'm finding out is what I like. I prefer warm yellow over like the cool neutral ones, if it makes sense. And we're using mini skeins that have been pre-soaked overnight. So this is best practice to pre-soak your skein of yarn, especially if you're going to go for colors that are tonals, because it will allow you to have a better color penetration. Ooh, this orange is very cute. I like it. It's very different orange than when we did it with the fire engine red. I can't wait to see what it looks like once it's finished to to set and everything. Yeah, so pre-soaking will help the color penetration. Same thing with having a lot of space for your skeins to move around, so you don't have as much natural resistance in your water when you have enough water for the skein to swim around, I guess. And that way you have a better color penetration. You're less likely to have patches of skeins that will be white afterwards, and like unity wise it's going to be better. Okay, so we're going to put this on the stove now. Okay, so we don't have citric acid in here yet. We're going to be waiting for like 10 minutes. I just turned on the heat on it, so we're going to wait to we're going to wait 10 minutes for the water to warm up a little bit, and then we're going to be adding our citric acid. So that way we can have a better color penetration as well. Because when you introduce your citric acid later on, you're allowing the color to move around more of your skeins of yarn, and so that way it's the same thing with having enough water for your yarn to just like freely float around. There's less resistance, and it's just overall for a better end result. So see you in 10. Okay, let's add some citric acid. So rule of thumb when it comes to acidity with citric acid, you want to do 1 tablespoon per pound of yarn. So it's 454 grams of yarn in or fiber. So usually I would say if you have 100-gram skeins, that if you're putting 1 teaspoon per skein of yarn, you're good. But it's the rule of thumb, and sometimes some colors require a tiny bit more um, citric acid and heat. So usually blues and greens will need a tiny bit more citric acid. So it's just like stuff that comes with experience. Okay, so here they currently have their citric acid. They are in about 8 cups of tap water that is on the stove, and we're going to wait for the water to reach between 85 to 95 Celsius, which is the right temperature for the color to strike properly and be able to settle in the yarn and everything. So once it's reached that temperature, we will set a 30 minutes timer, and then we are going to come back when the 30 minutes is up and see if we need a little bit more time on the stove or not. So I will see you later. Okay, so we are good, and we can turn off everything and let cool off completely before we're going to be washing off any excess dye. Okay, so I will see you when it's time to wash off the dye. Okay, so I'm expecting a tiny bit of bleeding over here for the first wash, a little bit like we did see previously last week with our magenta, because there's magenta in it, and it's going to bleed a tiny bit. Oh, some of those are tangled up, and it is making me crazy. I don't like this. Okay, you can already see some bleeding in here. It's crazy how we can get red by adding yellow to magenta. I love that. It makes me happy. Okay, so I'm going to let this soak for like 10 minutes. We're going to quickly go and see what it looks like in the pot because we have some leftover dyes. Okay, and here you can see we have quite a bit of color left, but I know for a fact, you know what, we might try. I might just grab a skein and dunk it in all the leftover color. I'll try to see. Yeah, just maybe one skein. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's look. I know we're going to have bleeding. I can already see it. So we're just going to do then a second soak. So we're going to do a quick second soak for like 5 minutes, and we're going to come back. And we're good. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the spin dryer, and we're going to let it dry overnight. And I will see you tomorrow for the final result. Okay, so here's the final result for the end of the fade. So I wanted to create this gradient. So this is why I only did the 5 over here, because we already had the 1-for-1 over here. So you can see the actual fade. I'm super happy. This is the vision I had when I was talking earlier about doing the actual gradient fade, going from one color to the other, and I really like it. So I think that moving forward, this is what we're going to do for this series. So we'll have the full gradient in one video. So I think that's going to be very awesome. And here, like I said, I was going to dunk a skein in all the leftover colors. So I mixed all the five leftover dye bath, and we have this like peachy, very soft pastel orange here. So it was very little color left, but we didn't waste it, which is always a goal when I'm doing this. I want to have the clearest bath as possible, so that way, well, it's good because it's not going back into the environment, it's within the skein. So this is also something I like to do with leftover bath, is just like simple colors, and they usually just go in my sales bin when I'm doing in-person markets. So yeah, so we have this lovely gradient, and I really like the color that we've obtained with this. I knew we would obtain orange doing this, but I really like the warmth that we have. I feel like we've obtained a much more warm orange than when we were doing with the fire engine red. I feel like deep magenta, it might be more warm than fire engine red. So it's just like a color preference at this point. You're more than welcome to use red to mix your colors and create orange, but like I think moving forward, I'll be more into going with my first love of deep magenta and just go from there. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please consider sharing, liking, and subscribing, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye!